Chon Min-jun died on Friday at 3:47 in the morning. Not from illness, not from an accident, from the fact that a week ago he bought the game Eternal Abyss Online, a long-awaited release he had been waiting 8 months for, and since installation had not gotten up from his chair for more than 3 minutes. His parents thought he had simply gotten carried away. His mom knocked on the door. He answered, "Just a minute, Mom. Wait." His dad left food at the threshold. The plates were sometimes taken, sometimes not. On the 7th day, his mom knocked and got no answer. Chon Min-jun was sitting in the chair in the same position as the last 2 days. The monitor glowed. The character on the screen stood in the middle of a dungeon, surrounded by dead monsters, with a full experience bar and 0 HP from the player at the keyboard. The irony was that he had finally reached level 100. A second before the end, if the end has seconds, Chon Min-jun had time to think one thought. Not about his parents, not about the fact that he had lived 28 years in one room with anime posters and a pile of empty ramen packs. Just, what a shame I won't see the next update. That was a very characteristic thought for him. Then the monitor went dark. Then everything else. The darkness lasted long enough for him to get used to it, and then the sounds came. Not gradually, sharply, all at once, as if someone had turned the volume knob to maximum. The crack of branches. The smell of earth. Damp, dark, thick. Something cold under his palms. Something rough. Roots, stones, moss. Chon Min-jun opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was the ground. Very close, about 15 centimeters from his face. "I'm lying down," he noted. "So I have a body." Good, that's already progress. He tried to stand up. It worked, but strangely. The center of gravity was not where it was expected. The arms were short, the legs too. All of him was wrong. Small, angular, with fingers that ended in blunt, slightly crooked claws. He found a stream 10 minutes later, small, with quiet water. He looked at his reflection. A goblin was looking back at him. Small, about 60 centimeters from crown to heel. Greenish skin with a gray tint. Large ears sticking out to the sides. Yellow eyes with a vertical pupil. A potato nose. A mouth too wide. Teeth too sharp for such a small mouth. Chon Min-jun looked at his reflection for a long time. Then he said aloud, just to check whether his voice worked. Seriously, the voice came out high, creaky, with that characteristic goblin timbre he had heard in hundreds of games and anime. Absolutely not his voice. "Seriously," he repeated. The reflection repeated it with the same expression. Then a notification appeared. Right in his field of vision, a semi-transparent screen, blue letters, a familiar interface. Almost identical to Eternal Abyss Online. Almost, because there was no line at the bottom that he read twice. Evolution system activated. Host identified, Goblin Reborn, 0 rank. Special status, mind of previous life preserved. The only available path of development, evolution through experience absorption. Evolution points are awarded for victory over creatures. The higher the rank of the target, the more EP. Upon reaching the threshold, evolution is available. Each evolution is irreversible and random in details, but the direction is determined by the host. Current EP, 0/100. Welcome to the world of Archenhost. Try not to die immediately. The last line was written in a different font, as if the system had added it on its own. Chon Min-jun closed the notification with a gesture, a movement of his gaze, as in a game, and looked around properly. A forest. Dense, dark, with trees about 20 meters tall. Evening or early night. A bluish light of unclear origin seeped through the canopy, too uniform for the moon. Far to the left, sounds he instantly classified as a camp. Voices, the crackling of a fire, a metallic clank. Far to the right, something else, darker, quieter, with a smell that even his goblin body didn't like. He sat down by the stream and thought for exactly 2 minutes. 28 years. No job, no girlfriend, no plans. But thousands of hours in games, thousands of hours of anime, thousands of hours studying mechanics, systems, strategies. All of it was in his head, not as dead weight, but as a working tool. Because right now he was standing inside the very system he knew better than anything in the world. 0 rank, he thought. The weakest goblin in the weakest body. In any game I've played, this is the starting position. Not a catastrophe, a starting point. 100 EP to the first evolution. Let's see what lives here. He stood up, clenched his crooked fists, felt the claws press into his palms. All right, he said to the darkness. Let's go. The first opponent was an earthworm, not a small one, as thick as his arm, as long as himself. It crawled out of the ground right in front of him as he walked along the stream. The system immediately provided data. Carry on earthworm. Rank F. Threat to 0 rank. Moderate. EP on victory 3. 3 points. Out of 100. Chan Minjun looked at the worm and mentally calculated. 33 worms to the first evolution if only from worms. Inefficient. But the worm was right in front of him and was looking at him with small dull eyes. Clearly not with friendliness. He hit it with a stone. 2 stones. 3. The worm turned out to be resilient. It writhed, tried to coil around his leg. The 4th stone hit the head end squarely. The worm went still. Victory. EP plus 3. Total. 3 over 100. Chan Minjun stood over the dead worm, breathing heavily, and thought that he had never in his life been so tired from a single mob. Then he picked up another stone and went looking for the next one. For 3 days, he hunted everything that was weaker than or equal to 0 rank. Worms, 3 points each. Cave beetles, 5. Forest rats, 4. Once he found a nest of swamp slugs, there were 7 of them. 35 points for 1 raid, the most productive hour since the beginning of his new existence. By the end of the 3rd day, 78 points. 22 remained to the first evolution. That was when he found them. 2 adventurers, young, clearly of low rank, because they walked without caution, talked loudly, and carried trophies in open bags. Chan Minjun watched them from a tree. He had climbed it instinctively. The goblin body climbed trees better than it walked on the ground. The system provided data on both. Adventurer, human, rank E+. EP on victory, 47. Adventurer, human, rank E. EP on victory, 38. 47 and 38. Together, 85. Plus his 78. 163. More than needed for the first evolution. But they were rank E. He was 0. 2 against 1. Chan Minjun sat on the branch and thought. Unhurriedly, unlike most game characters he had seen in Manhwa, he was not going to jump down with a battle spirit cry. He was going to win. The adventurers set up a small camp at the base of the tree. They took out food. Relaxed. One began cleaning his sword, mechanically, without attention. The second lay down and closed his eyes. Divided attention. One is busy with his hands. The other is dozing. Chan Minjun descended the trunk slowly, centimeter by centimeter. Fortunately, the bark was rough and the claws held well. He descended to the lower branch 2 meters above the sleeping one. He took out a stone he had found that morning. Sharp, weighty. He waited for the first adventurer to turn toward the fire. He turned. Chan Minjun jumped. He landed on the chest of the sleeping one. The stone came down on the temple, precisely without a swing, with the weight of his entire small body added to the blow. The adventurer jerked once and went limp. The first one turned around a second later. Saw it. Opened his mouth. Chan Minjun was already running. Not toward him, away from him, into the darkness of the forest. The adventurer with the sword rushed after him with a shout, with a torch blazing. He ran fast, considerably faster than the goblin. Chan Minjun had known this in advance. That's why he had chosen the spot in advance, while watching from the tree. A pit by an old root, half buried with leaves, wide enough for a person. He had found it during the day, marked it, remembered the distance. The adventurer ran straight toward it. He stumbled on a root in the darkness. He didn't fall into the pit, just lost his balance, slowed down, dropped the torch. That was enough. Chan Minjun was already behind him, jumped onto his back, claws into his neck. The adventurer roared, began spinning, trying to throw him off. He shook, struck his back with the sword hilt, painful, every blow reverberating through his entire body. Chan Minjun held on. claws deeper. The adventurer stumbled again, fell to one knee on the ground, the moment. The stone a second time, the back of the head. Silence. Chan Minjun stood over two bodies and breathed heavily. His ribs ached from the hilt blows. One claw was broken, apparently they break. Interesting information for the future. The notification came with a delay, as if the system was also processing what had happened. Victory times 2. Targets: Adventurer rank E+, Adventurer rank E. Total EP plus 85. Current score 163 over 100. Threshold exceeded. First evolution available. Additionally, tactical victory over opponents significantly superior to the host has been recorded. Strategy bonus plus 15 EP. Total accumulated 178. Remainder carried over to the next threshold. Strategy bonus. The system rewarded smart fighting. He remembered that. Evolution available. Choose a direction. 1. Goblin Warrior. Increase in physical characteristics, body growth, claw reinforcement. 2. Goblin Shadow. Enhancement of stealth, speed, camouflage skill. 3. Goblin Mind. Enhancement of intellect and perception, basic magical potential. Rare path. Chan Minjun read the 3 options twice. Warrior, standard. Physique up, hit harder. Shadow, speed and stealth, his current style. Mind, magic and intellect, a rare path. In games, rare paths are usually harder, but open up more. But I'm already using intellect as my main weapon. Shadow will enhance what's working. Mind will open something new. He thought for 1 minute. Shadow, he decided. For now. At the next evolution, I'll look at the rare path. First, I need to survive. 2, he said aloud. The evolution happened at night in the forest. Quickly, almost painlessly. The body stretched by 10 centimeters. 70 now. The skin darkened, became almost gray, blending better with the shadows. The claws became thinner and sharper, and something new. He could feel the shadows. Literally felt how they lay, how they moved with the movement of light, which of them were deep enough to hide in. The system recorded, evolution complete. Goblin Shadow, rank F+. New skills. Shadow Merge. Passive camouflage in low light conditions. Silent movement. Footsteps inaudible at distances greater than 2 meters. Next threshold. 500 EP, 500. With a remainder of 78. Another 422. Chan Minjun lay in the darkness of the forest and looked up at the sky through the canopy. The sky here was different. 2 moons, one white, one with a bluish tint, and stars arranged in unfamiliar constellations. He thought about his parents, about his mom who knocked on the door, about his dad with the plates at the threshold. Then he stopped thinking about it. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it wouldn't help either them or him. What would help them was him surviving here, finding meaning in this existence, stopping being who he had been. Not in the sense of the body's form, but in the sense of how he had lived. Chan Minjun is dead, he said quietly to the darkness. My name is… He thought for a second. Vash, he said. Just like that. The first thing that came to mind. Short, dark, fitting for a creature that lives in shadows. The system responded unexpectedly. Name registered. Vash. He closed his eyes. Tomorrow, hunting. 422 points to the second evolution. There's a lot of work, so we'll start early. The second evolution happened 2 weeks later. Not 2 calm weeks. 2 weeks that Vash later remembered as the most eventful in both lives. The forest around turned out to be richer than it seemed. Not just small creatures, but adventurers too. There were many of them here. Small groups exploring the ruins to the north, loners hunting rare monsters, trading caravans cutting through the forest. He didn't attack everyone indiscriminately. This was an important principle he had formulated in the first days. Random attacks meant searches, raids, high-rank adventurers hunting him purposefully. Orderly attacks, on loners, on night posts, on those who had fallen behind their group went unnoticed longer. The forest was large. There were many adventurers. A lone missing person, an accident. A pattern requires dozens. He gave the forest a few days between each attack. By the end of the first week, he had a tactical rule. Never attack in the same place twice in a row. Never leave traces of a recognizable pattern. Vary the method, sometimes a pit, sometimes a stone from a tree, sometimes simply the knife he had found on the first victims. By the end of the second week, the counter showed 491. 9 were lacking. He found them at the eastern entrance to the ruins. 2 apprentice mages, clearly students of some academy, rank E minus both. 18 and 16 points. 34 total, with room to spare. The mages were more dangerous than swordsmen. He understood that in the middle of the fight when one of them managed to throw a fireball at him. Small, weak, but enough to burn his right side and half his arm. The pain was real. Not a game HP bar, but real searing pain that made him lose concentration for a second. But only for a second. Mages are slower during cast time, he noted. When reciting the formula, they're vulnerable. Need to strike in that moment. The second mage didn't have time to finish the spell. Victory times 2. EP plus 34. Total, 525 over 500. Threshold exceeded. Second evolution available. This time there were 4 options. 1. Goblin Assassin, specialization in fast lethal attacks, poison enhancement. 2. Goblin Hunter, ranged combat, intuition, tracking. 3. Dark Goblin, magical path, access to dark affinity. 4. Goblin Predator, chaotic evolution, random characteristics, high risk and high potential. Dark Goblin, magic. There was the rare path he had seen the first time as mined and set aside. Now it had appeared again, more specific this time. Dark affinity, he thought. That's what the other one had in the previous story, the slime one. Dark magic plus shadow camouflage. That's synergy. They enhance each other. 3. The second evolution was longer and more intense. The body had grown. 85 centimeters now, almost a meter. The skin had become truly dark, almost black with a violet sheen, like a starless night sky. The eyes had changed. The yellow was gone. Now they glowed with a dim violet in the darkness, like embers. And a new sensation, something inside, deep, like a clenched fist that wants to open. Dark affinity, evolution complete. Dark Goblin, rank E. New skills, dark affinity. Base level, concentration of dark energy in the hands, attack enhancement. Shadow step, instant movement up to 3 meters through a shadow. Cooldown, 10 seconds. Next threshold, 2000 EP. Shadow step, instant movement through a shadow. Vash tried it immediately, stood by a tree, focused on a shadow 5 meters away. Stepped. The world flickered. Darkness for a fraction of a second. And he was standing by another tree. His body felt a light dizziness that passed quickly. He did it again. And again. By the 10th time, no dizziness. Now, he thought. Now it's interesting. 2,000 points took a month. Not because there were no targets, because Vash worked differently now. Rank E meant that ordinary adventurers had started giving too little, 15, 20 points. To accumulate 2,000 from them would require hundreds of attacks, which would inevitably attract attention. Higher rank targets were needed. He found the first one a week later. A lone rank D adventurer, a hunter, patrolling the eastern part of the forest. Judging by his equipment, experienced, clearly not his first year in the field. The camouflage skill and shadow step together gave Vash what most of his victims lacked. Complete surprise and the ability to instantly change position. The fight with the rank D hunter was the first real test. He began with observation. For 3 days he tracked the hunter's route. The hunter followed the same circuit with small variations, always making camp at the same time by an old oak. During the camp break, he removed the bow, his main weapon, and leaned it against the tree. Without the bow, half as weak. Vash waited for the 4th day. The hunter sat by the oak, removed the bow, took out food. Shadow stepped from the shadow of the bushes to the shadow of the oak. 3 meters in 0 seconds. The hunter sensed it. The reflexes of a professional began to turn. Vash was already behind him, dark affinity in his hands, not at full strength. He hadn't yet learned full strength, just coating the claws with dark energy made them sharper. 3 strikes to the back, quickly, without windup, like a bird pecking. The hunter was in light armor. The strikes didn't go deep, but he lost his balance, fell forward, reached for the bow. Shadow stepped to the bow before him. Vash threw the bow aside. The hunter was stronger, faster, more experienced. He caught Vash the next second, grabbed his arm, threw him. The flight was unpleasant, the landing worse. Vash crashed into a tree root, lost his bearings for a second. Get up now. The hunter was approaching with a hunting knife, slowly, carefully. He clearly didn't understand what he was dealing with. Saw a small dark goblin and wasn't in a hurry. That was his mistake. Vash waited until he came close enough. Rose slowly, demonstratively, as if barely holding on. The hunter took another step. Shadow stepped to the shadow behind his back. Strike with dark affinity to the back of the head. Everything he had, maximum concentration. The dark energy exploded in a small wave on contact. Not enormous, not destructive, but sufficient. The hunter fell. Vash stood over him, breathing heavily, with pain in his side from the throw, and waited for the notification. Victory. Adventurer. Rank DEP plus 120. Total. 620 over 2,000. 120 points. 1 fight. More than the entire first week of hunting small prey. That's the right strategy, he thought. Quality, not quantity. Strong targets, the right moment, no frontal fighting. The third evolution opened the world to him, literally, because the new form finally allowed him to enter it without hiding in the bushes. Evolution complete. Dark Goblin Knight, rank D+. Height, 120 centimeters. Body, dense, muscular, proportional. Dark affinity, advanced level. New skills, dark armor, concentration of dark energy as an external protective shell. Shadow leap, expanded version of shadow step, range up to 20 meters. Voice, standardized, capable of reproducing human speech without an accent. Voice without an accent. He tried it, said something aloud. It came out fine. Not his voice from his past life. Lower, with a slight rasp, but completely human. Without the goblin creak. Height 120. Still small. A child by human standards. But no longer a dwarf. The system added something new. For the first time in 3 evolutions, a line appeared that hadn't been there before. Function unlocked, disguise artifact. When in possession of the appropriate item, the host can maintain an altered appearance. Compatibility with dark affinity. High. Recommendation: find a disguise crystal or similar artifact. Disguise artifact. Altered appearance. That is, a human form. Vash felt something resembling excitement for the first time in 2 months. Not just not bad, but a real here it is. This was the road to the city, to the human world, to information, to resources, to the next level of the plan. Need a disguise crystal, need a city. Need to first understand what a disguise crystal looks like and where to get one. He spent the next 3 days observing the trade road to the north of the forest. Merchants, adventurers, peasants, all traveled along the road to the large city whose skyline was visible in clear weather. On the 3rd day, he saw what he was looking for, or rather, heard it. 2 merchants were discussing their goods. One was boasting about 3rd-class disguise crystals, a fresh batch from the moon mines, any appearance for up to 8 hours. Vash looked at the merchant from the bushes with the expression that now served him as a smile. There's the target. He took the trading caravan that same night. Not all of it. Just one specific crate in one specific wagon. The guard was 4 people, rank E. Enough to repel random bandits, not enough for someone who knew Shadow Leap and Dark Armor, and had spent 3 months learning from the Night Forest everything it could teach. He didn't kill the guards, for the first time consciously choosing not to kill. Not out of pity, out of pragmatism. Dead guards around a missing crate meant an investigation. bound and unconscious guards around a missing crate. A robbery, not the first and not the last on this road. He found the crate by the scent of magic. Dark affinity gave a sense of magical items as a faint tingling. He opened it. Inside, a dozen crystals, small, the color of moonlight. He took 3, closed the crate, left into the forest. The disguise crystal worked more simply than he expected. The instructions were engraved directly on the surface. Tiny letters, but his night vision was good. Focus on the desired appearance. Activate the crystal by touch. Hold for 8 hours. Desired appearance. He thought about this for a long time. Not his own appearance from his past life. No point. A new person. Young, inconspicuous, unremarkable. Dark hair, average build. A face that people forget within a minute. The height he couldn't change with the crystal. Only appearance, not the skeleton. So his real 120 centimeters needed to look like something explicable. A young teenager, appearing about 13 or 14 years old. Small, but not suspiciously small. He touched the crystal. The sensation was unusual. Not a transformation like during evolution, but an overlay. Like putting on a costume over yourself. An illusion, not reality. The skin remained dark beneath it. The crystal simply created a visible covering. He found a puddle in the forest. Murky, but sufficient for a reflection. A teenager was looking back at him. Pale, dark-haired, with sharp facial features in light dark clothing. The clothing he had taken from one of the adventurers. A bit too large, altered as best he could. The eyes? The crystal had left them almost right. Only if you looked into them for a long time in certain lighting could you see something inhuman in the depths. The main thing is not to look people in the eyes too long, he noted. Or too intently. Kai, he said to the reflection. A new name for a new appearance. Vash for the forest. Kai for the city. The reflection nodded. The following morning, for the first time in 3 months, he stepped out onto the road and walked toward the city like an ordinary traveler. The city was called Erwin. Large, not enormous by capital standards, but alive, noisy, densely packed with life. Gates with 2 guards, a line of carts and pedestrians, above the gates a coat of arms, a golden lion on a blue field. The guard at the gate looked at him, a dark-haired teenager with nothing but a small sack. Alone? He asked. Alone, Vash answered in Kai's voice. Where from? From the east, the village of Hen. The guard looked for another second, then lost interest. One teenager from the provinces posed no threat. Move along. Erwan greeted him with the noise of the market, the smell of roasted meat and wood and horse manure. Vash walked slowly, memorizing everything. The layout of the streets, where the Adventurers' Guild was, where the market was, where the taverns were, where the guards stood and how often they changed. The Adventurers' Guild was in the center, a large stone building with an emblem of crossed swords. Beside it, a notice board, densely covered with sheets. He read them without stopping, just walked past, his eyes sliding over the text. Contracts, assignments, notices about missing adventurers. 2 from the forest to the east. The description didn't match his victims exactly, but was similar. And one notice in the center, on red paper with a gold seal. Erwan's Arena of Glory. Open tournament. Held annually in the last week of the harvest month. Participants of all races and ranks. The winner receives the title of Champion of Erwan, a cash prize of 1,000 gold, a personal audience with the Duke of Erwan, finalists of rank A and above, a special prize at the Duke's discretion. Registration open until the start of the tournament. Until start, 6 weeks. Vash stood before the board and read the line "Special prize at the Duke's discretion." He felt what in his previous life had arisen when he found a hidden quest in a game. The arena. 6 weeks. 6 weeks and 4 evolutions, if it worked out, separated him from rank A. He bought a meat pie from a street vendor, the first hot food in 3 months. The taste was so overwhelming that he stopped in the middle of the street and just stood with his eyes closed for about 5 seconds. The vendor looked at him with mild concern. "Good pie," said Vash, opening his eyes. "Thank you, young man," the vendor answered carefully. Vash nodded and walked on. So, he thought, chewing. The arena. 6 weeks. Need 4 evolutions. Need a plan. Need a base outside the city. Need information about strong targets for fast EP accumulation. Start with information. The tavern in the Eastern Quarter was cheap enough not to raise questions about a teenager with a small sack. It was frequented enough by adventurers to be a source of information. He took a corner table, ordered tea, and began to listen. This was his best skill, in his previous life and in this one. To sit quietly and listen, to process what you hear. After 2 hours, he knew the following. To the northeast of Erewhon, in the old quarries, a den of stone trolls. Rank D+ to E+. The guild had put out a contract for a clearance. Nobody was taking it. The pay wasn't enough for the risk. In the Black Gorge, 20 kilometers away. Shadow wolves, rank C-. They hunt in packs. 3 adventurers had disappeared in the last month. And the main thing, in the dungeons beneath the old fort to the west, a dark dryad had taken up residence. Rank B, solitary, territorial, lethally dangerous. 2,000 gold on her head, the contract had been sitting for a year. The trolls, fast points at the start, the wolves, the main grind, the dryad, the final push before the arena. He drank his tea, stood up, tossed a coin on the table, left the city before dark. The crystal gave 8 hours. He couldn't risk the illusion ending in the middle of Erewhon. In the forest, he removed the crystal, became himself. He took from the sack a notebook taken from one of the merchants. He began to write a plan. Not just notes, a real plan with a table. Targets, ranks, estimated EP, sequence, deadlines. For 28 years, he had done the same thing for video games. Built leveling tables, calculated optimal routes, analyzed bosses. Nobody valued this. His parents said he was wasting time. Former classmates laughed. Here it was the only truly important thing he knew how to do. Chan Minjin smiled. Not with a goblin grimace. Inside. All right, he said to the darkness. Time to show what I'm capable of. He folded the notebook. Stood up. The night forest was waiting. The trolls turned out to be large. This was expected. Trolls in any game are large. But one thing is knowing this theoretically. Another is standing in the darkness of the old quarries and looking up at a creature 3 meters tall with slate-colored skin and arms thicker than Vash entire. The system provided data immediately. Stone Troll, rank D+. Regeneration. High. Physical damage closes over in 20 to 30 seconds. Vulnerability, fire, and dark magic disrupt regeneration. Intellect. Low. Reacts to movement and smell, poor vision in darkness. EP on victory, 85. 85 points. 8 such trolls and he would be at the threshold of the 4th evolution. The quarries by the sounds contained no fewer than 12 of them. Regeneration is disrupted by dark magic. Vash looked at his hands. Dark affinity pulsed steadily, like a second heartbeat. He had spent the last 2 weeks training it, learning to concentrate it not only in his palms but throughout his whole body, learning to make the discharge directed and precise. The first troll stood with its back turned, digging through a pile of stones. Vash cleared everything unnecessary from his thinking. He just looked at the troll. At the back, at the base of the neck where the skin was thinner. Shadow leap, 20 meters in 0 seconds. Darkness, flash position. He appeared right behind the troll on a stone ledge. Dark affinity in both hands, maximum concentration, and both fists into the base of the creature's neck simultaneously. The troll roared deafeningly. The quarries amplified the sound to the point of pain in the ears. A hand the size of a small boulder passed where Vash had been a fraction of a second earlier. Shadow leaped to the shadow by the wall. The wound on the troll's neck began to close. Vash watched. Regeneration worked fast. The gray skin was knitting together, but slower than it should have been. The dark affinity in the wound was interfering, slowing the process by roughly half. So I need to strike more often than it regenerates, Vash thought. Not deeper, more often. This turned into a rhythm. Leap, strike, leap, leap, strike, leap. The troll spun, struck at the air, roared. It connected sometimes. One hit sent Vash flying about 3 meters, and every time he managed to find a shadow before landing. The dark armor absorbed part of the damage, Without it, fractures would have been guaranteed after the very first hit. The troll began to slow on the 3rd minute. The accumulated damage with disrupted regeneration was adding up. The neck, both shoulders, the lower back. The creature was still standing but losing precision of movement. On the 4th minute, it fell. Victory. EP plus 85. Vash stood over the first troll and listened to the quarries. The roar had attracted attention. Deep inside, heavy stomping was already audible. They're coming. Good, he thought. They're coming themselves. Saves time. The next ones came 2 together. Fighting 2 trolls simultaneously was different. Not twice as hard, but 4 times as hard because, while he was leaping from one to the other, the second managed to partially regenerate. He had to change tactics on the fly. Strikes deeper, less frequent, in one spot so that accumulated damage wouldn't dissipate. This took 12 minutes and cost 2 broken ribs. The dark armor didn't hold up against a simultaneous strike from both. The ribs cracked, breathing became painful. After 20 minutes, the pain subsided to tolerable. EP plus 170. By dawn, the quarries were empty. 12 trolls. The final one, the largest, rank E+, clearly the pack leader, was the hardest of all. Vash spent 23 minutes on it, took a hit that threw him into a stone wall hard enough to crack it. In the end, he won only by using a technique devised right in the middle of the fight. Direct dark affinity, not outward but inside the target through an open wound, like poison, to destroy regeneration from within. The leader fell not from external damage. It fell because from within its own magic had begun working against it. EP for the leader, plus 140. Tactics. Bonus, plus 30. Total for the quarries. 865 EP. Overall score, 1,693 over 2,000. 307 to the 4th evolution. He left the quarries when the sky was beginning to lighten. He sat at the entrance. He ate hardtack and dried meat from the sack. Without pleasure, simply fuel. The ribs still ached. The claws on his left hand had again partially broken. Dark affinity at maximum concentration put too much strain on them. He thought about the wolves. Rank C-, packs. 3 missing adventurers in a month, meaning tactically difficult, otherwise rank D adventurers would have managed. 37 points for 1 rank C- creature, multiplied by a pack of 10 to 15, and you'd get more than needed for the 4th evolution. He returned to Erwan. At the guild, he found detailed maps of the Black Gorge. He didn't buy them. He read them standing at the shelf, memorized them. Topography, marked den locations, routes of past expeditions with notes on losses. Shadow wolves hunted at night. The den was in the central fissure of the gorge. They came out by 3 routes, always different. Intelligent, for beasts. The missing adventurers had been night ones, all 3. Meaning the wolves took them on their territory. The pack leader, according to one of the old reports, was noted as particularly large. Rank C, half a step above the rest. Vash read and thought that the gorge at night was ideal conditions for him. There would be many shadows. The wolves react to movement. The shadow leap vanishes from the field of vision instantly. Dark armor is effective against bites. The only problem? The pack. If they surrounded him and attacked simultaneously, he wouldn't handle 10 simultaneous attacks even with Shadow Leap. Need to break up the pack. Separate them. Draw them away one by one. He bought from an alchemist's shop 2 vials of scent lure. Standard hunting goods. Imitates the smell of wounded prey. And 1 vial of repellent for the opposite effect. The alchemist, an elderly gnome with enormous spectacles, took his coins without looking up. Then looked up anyway. He looked at Vash over his spectacles. "You're hunting, boy?" "Yes." "What are you hunting with lures like these?" "Wolves," answered Vash. The gnome looked at him for a long time. Then, "A lone hunter going after shadow wolves is either suicidal or someone very good." "The second," said Vash. The gnome looked for another second, then let out a sound with the tone Vash recognized from his previous life. A person who sees something unusual and hasn't yet decided how to feel about it. "Good luck, boy." "Thank you." The Black Gorge at night was exactly as its name suggested. A deep cleft in the rocks, about 20 meters wide at the narrowest point and about 50 at the widest. The walls nearly vertical, the dark stone absorbing light. At the bottom, sparse, stunted trees, old bones, traces of many claws in the earth. Vash sat at the edge and looked down. The perception skill enhanced by dark affinity gave him a picture of the gorge as a thermal background. The wolves were there. 17, not 10. Most in the central fissure, sleeping. 2 patrolling the western route, 2 patrol wolves. Start with them. He descended the gorge wall quietly. The claws on smooth stone held well. He stood in the shadow at the base of the wall and waited for the first patrol wolf. The wolf walked its familiar route. Nose to the ground, ears forward. Large, its shoulder at Vash's height, fur almost black with a silver sheen at the tips. Beautiful. Vash noted this in passing. Did he regret it? No. Pity for beautiful monsters in a world where monsters kill people was misplaced sentimentality. Shadow leaped to the shadow behind the wolf's back. Strike with dark affinity. Not to the neck as with the trolls, but to the spine. Wolves are faster than trolls. They have no regeneration. One right strike was needed rather than a series. The wolf didn't even have time to yelp. EP, plus 37. The second patrol wolf reacted. It sensed something, began to turn, fur bristling. But Vash had already shifted to the shadow on the other side. The wolf looked toward where the scent was. The attack came from the side. EP, plus 37. Total, 1,767 over 2,000. He uncorked the lure vial. The smell of wounded prey spread through the gorge. A minute later, 3 came out of the central fissure. Curious or hungry, it didn't matter. The first 2 he took the same way. Shadow leaps, single strikes, silence. The third sensed something and let out a howl. Loud, a signal howl. And Vash understood that the calm part of the hunt was over. The pack poured out of the fissure. Not 2, not 3. All the remaining 12. Plus the pack leader. Vash saw the leader immediately. Enormous, darker than the rest, with eyes that glowed red rather than yellow. Rank C, as expected, about 1.5 times larger than the regular ones. 12 wolves, plus the pack leader in a narrow gorge. Now it's interesting. Vash uncorked the second vial, the repellent, and threw it into the center of the approaching pack. The effect was unexpectedly strong. A sharp chemical smell. For wolves with their sensitive noses, it was like a punch in the face. The pack split apart. A second of chaos ensued. A second. That was all he needed. Shadow leap into the center of the chaos. Dark armor at maximum. 3 strikes, 3 directions, 3 wolves. Dark affinity didn't kill them instantly. It dealt damage, disoriented them, knocked them off their feet. Then back into the shadow. Cooldown. 10 seconds. For 10 seconds he ran. The wolves were recovering, regrouping. 2 gave chase. 1 almost caught up. The lunge was swift. Vash didn't get away completely and teeth closed on his shoulder. Pain. Sharp. Deep. Dark armor didn't help. Wolf teeth were saturated with shadow affinity. It passed through the protection. He didn't stop. Shadow leap activated. He tore himself from the teeth, appeared in the shadow by the wall. The shoulder was bleeding. The arm obeyed poorly. Movement slower by about 20%. 1 arm, he noted calmly. Fine. We work with 1 arm. The next 12 minutes were the hardest fight of his new life. The pain in his shoulder was growing. The arm was going more numb, and each shadow leap took more effort than the previous one. Concentration on dark affinity required clarity, and clarity was diminishing. He counted. Methodically, like a table in a notebook. 7 wolves dead or taken out of the fight. 6 still active. Plus the pack leader who hadn't attacked yet. Standing apart, watching. The leader is smart, thought Vash. Waiting for me to weaken. The arm no longer lifted above the elbow. The 5th wolf fell. 4 plus the pack leader remained. The leader finally moved. Not straight, in an arc, slowly, without haste. The red eyes didn't blink. The shadow affinity around it was denser and darker than the regular wolves. The system provided new data. Pack leader of shadow wolves, rank C. Special skill, Shadow suppression. Suppresses the dark affinity skills of an opponent within a 5-meter radius by 30%. Suppresses dark affinity. That's why the experienced adventurers didn't survive. They went in at night, their skills were partially suppressed, they didn't understand why their attacks were weaker than usual. They lost their rhythm and the pack finished them off. He watched the leader slowly tightening its circle and thought, shadow suppression operates within a 5-meter radius. Shadow leap has a range of 20 meters. If he never came within 5 meters, the suppression wouldn't work. But strikes from 20 meters deal no damage. So something with a range of effect greater than 5 meters was needed. He remembered the technique used on the troll leader. Dark affinity into the target through a wound. Not an external strike. Internal effect. If he charged dark energy through a discharge directionally, like a spear, could it reach a target for more than 5 meters? He didn't know. He had never tried. Good time to try. The leader, 8 meters away. 4 regular wolves on the flanks. Vash focused on his left arm. The only working one. Dark affinity. Maximum concentration. Not into a fist. Along the entire arm, from shoulder to fingertips. The sensation was like squeezing something very dense and very hot simultaneously. Then, discharge. Not wide, not an explosion. Narrow. A thread. A needle. Straight into the leader's chest from 8 meters. The leader sensed it, flinched sideways. Half the discharge missed. Half caught the shoulder. The leader stopped. The regular wolves rushed. Vash didn't retreat. Shadow leaped to the leader, straight into the suppression radius. Left fist. 1 strike, precisely where the discharge had landed. Dark energy went inside through the already opened channel. The leader howled, genuinely, not as a signal, but in pain. Shadow leaped back to the wall, maximum range. The regular wolves missed. The leader was standing, but its shadow suppression flickered, faltered, like a light with a power surge. The dark energy inside had disrupted the skill's function. Vash made 2 more needle discharges. 1 missed, 1 hit the side. The leader took a step, then fell to 1 knee. The regular wolves stopped. A pack without a leader loses coordination. 1 regular wolf tried to attack on its own. Vash met it with a shadow leap head-on. They literally collided, but he ended up on top, and the strike landed right. The 3 remaining regular wolves fled. The leader was down. Vash stood in the center of the gorge, shoulder non-functional, left arm trembling from affinity overload, staying on his feet only because there was nowhere to fall. The notifications came in a series. Victory. Pack leader of Shadow Wolves, rank C, EP, plus 220. Victory times 9. Shadow Wolves, rank C-, EP, plus 333. Tactics. Bonus. Non-standard skill application, plus 45. Total EP, plus 598. Overall score, 2,365 over 2,000. Threshold exceeded. 4th evolution available. He sat down right where he stood, on the gorge floor, among the dead wolves, in the darkness. The right shoulder was throbbing. The arm was beginning to recover slowly. Evolution options. 1. Dark Goblin Knight. 2. Shadow Mage. 3. Shadow Devourer. Absorption of the shadow affinity of opponents. Rare path. High potential in the long term. Shadow Devourer. Vash read the description 3 times. Absorption of the shadow affinity of opponents. He had just seen how the leader's shadow suppression worked. If he could not just resist it but absorb it, the leader would weaken in battle while he grew stronger. This wasn't just a powerful ability. This was a weapon against any creature with dark affinity. And in a world where dark magic was one of the most widespread, this meant a great deal. 3, he said. The 4th evolution was painful. Truly painful, for the first time from the beginning. The body reformatted deeper than before. Something changed inside, not only physically but magically. He lay on the gorge floor and watched the night sky with its 2 moons while it happened. He thought about Chan Minjin, who had died at his monitor. That person had never fought in his life. Not really, not with pain and stakes. He had feared conflict, given enduring any argument, lost in real life everything he won in games. Not here. Here, it was one and the same. Maybe, he thought, that world was simply the wrong game for me. The evolution completed. Shadow Devourer, rank C+. Height, 140 centimeters. New skills. Shadow Absorption, upon physical contact with a creature possessing dark or shadow affinity. Partial absorption of their affinity, weakening the opponent and strengthening the host. Shadow Needle, ranged dark affinity attack, range up to 30 meters. Next threshold, 8,000 EP. He exhaled. 8,000 points. 5 weeks until the arena. The Dark Dryad would give about 1,000 for a victory. Rank B, the highest category currently available to him. He stood up. The shoulder was whole. The evolution had healed the damage in passing. Height 140. Still a teenager in appearance, but no longer a dwarf. The body was different. Denser, faster, with dark affinity that now felt not like a clenched fist, but like a calm river. He climbed out of the gorge. 4 weeks. 8,000 points. The Dark Dryad and something else. Something he didn't yet know. In Erwan, the arena. In the arena, the Duke's special prize. He walked toward the city, and the night forest parted before him. The shadows fell right, as if they recognized one of their own. He found the Dark Dryad 3 days later. The old fort to the west of Erwan, ruins overgrown with ivy, with 3 towers of which only one still stood. The dungeons beneath it went down 3 levels. The Dryad inhabited the 2nd level, in a large hall that had once been an armory. The system provided data even on approach. Dark Dryad, rank B, affinity. Dark plus nature, a rare combination. Skills. Whips of dark vines. Ranged and close combat, high speed and power. Root grasp, immobilization. Life drain, restores HP at the expense of the opponent's life force. Vulnerability, fire. Dark affinity. Neutral, neither vulnerability nor protection. Special, shadow absorption compatible with host skill. Vash read that line twice. If he used shadow absorption on the Dark Dryad, he would be drawing dark affinity from her during the fight. This wasn't just damage. This was depriving her of part of her magical power in real time. But the Dryad was rank B. He was rank C+, a gap of 1.5 ranks. 1,000 EP for the victory, he reminded himself. Plus tactics bonuses if done right. That's 1/8 of the needed amount in a single fight. He spent 2 days studying the dungeons. Not going deep, only scouting. The first level was populated with small creatures. The second level began behind a heavy wooden door, wound with dark vines. The Dryad sensed approach. The vines stirred when he came near the door, a passive reaction to foreign presence. He studied the movement of the vines, their speed, how far from the door they reached. He learned the pattern. The vines reacted to the body heat of living creatures. Dark affinity was cold. If he wrapped himself completely in dark armor, the thermal signature decreased. Not disappeared, but decreased. On the 3rd day he went in. The Dryad was beautiful. That too was a fact he noted neutrally. Tall, a feminine silhouette of interwoven black vines and dark bark, with a face that seemed carved from dark wood. Eyes, 2 glowing green flames. Around her the constant movement of vines like living tentacles. She saw him immediately. A small dark creature, she said, and her voice was layered like leaves in the wind. You are not an adventurer. No, Vash agreed. You have come to kill me? Yes, a pause. The Dryad looked at him. The green flames didn't blink. Honest, she said. That is unusual. The last ones who came said they wanted to talk. Then they tried to kill me. A conversation is also possible, said Vash. First. About what? About you. About what you are doing here. About why you killed 3 adventurers from Erwan last month. The Dryad was silent for a second. They started it? I know. That's why I'm asking. She looked at him for a long time. The vines dropped a little lower, not withdrawn, but the tension eased. I didn't want to be here, she said. I was displaced when my forest to the north was destroyed. I found this place. The dark affinity of the fort is compatible with my nature. I don't attack first, but those who come arrive with weapons. Vash listened. He knew this type of character. Not a villain, not a hero, simply a creature living its life in a place inconvenient for humans. In other stories, the main character would have found a way to spare her. In other stories, here, 8,000 points. 5 evolutions. The arena. I'm sorry your forest was destroyed, he said. And he meant it not as a tactic, simply as a fact. It's unfair, but you're going to kill me anyway. Yes? The vines flew up. The fight with the dryad was different. Not like with the trolls, not like with the wolves. Those had been strength. She was speed and intelligence. The vines attacked from 3 directions simultaneously, constantly, without pause, replacing each other. While he dodged one, the second was already circling his position. Root grasp triggered on the 3rd minute. The earth beneath him cracked open and Root seized his left leg. Shadow leap out of the grasp to the shadow behind her back. Shadow absorption, for the first time in a real fight, not in training. He touched her with his palm against the dark bark and felt the skill engage. Cold, dense, dark affinity flowed from her into him. Slowly, but perceptibly. The dryad flinched, in surprise, for the first time since the start of the fight. The vines reacted more strongly, more chaotically. One struck him in the chest. Through him 4 meters, the dark armor absorbed the blow but cracked. He got up. The absorption had given him an increase. Dark affinity, slightly denser, slightly stronger. The dryad, slightly slower. Just slightly. Not enough. More contacts were needed. The next 8 minutes were a game of touches. He sought moments of contact with her. She tried to prevent it. Each contact gave him a little more and took from her a little less. Gradually, slowly, but the scale was shifting. At the 11th minute, the vines became noticeably slower. At the 15th, the dryad stopped attacking. "You are consuming me," she said. "Not with malice, with understanding. Yes. I cannot stop you? No." Silence. The green flames looked at him. "Then do it quickly," she said. "Without pain if you can." Vash looked at her for a second. "All right, shadow absorption at maximum. Both contacts, both palms against her trunk, full opening of the skill. Not the slow drain. Rapid absorption. Everything she could give. Dark affinity poured into him in a wave. Enormous, dense, several times more powerful than everything he had accumulated until now. The dryad faded quietly. The green flames slowly went out. The vines settled. Vash stood in the empty hall, flooded with foreign dark affinity, and felt it integrating into his own. Not as something alien, but as something complementary. Like 2 rivers merging into one. The system was silent for several seconds. Then, victory. Dark Dryad. Rank B. EP, plus 1,200. Additionally, absorption of rank. B Dark Affinity, bonus to Shadow Absorption skill. Enhancement times 2. Total EP, plus 1,200. Overall score, 3,565 over 8,000. He looked at the number. 4,435 to the 5th evolution. 4 weeks until the arena. Not enough, he thought. Other targets are needed. He left the fort's dungeons into the evening light. He sat by the ruined wall. He opened the notebook. He wrote for a long time. Recalculated, rebuilt the plan. Then stopped at one line he had written and crossed out and written again. Arena of Glory. Participants. EP for victory over high-rank adventurers in combat. The system awarded points for victories, including victories over adventurers, including in an official fight at the arena. He wrote to the system mentally, as he had learned over 3 months. System, confirm. EP is awarded for victory at the official arena. The answer came immediately, confirmed. Victory in an officially registered tournament counts as a combat victory. EP is awarded according to the opponent's rank. Note: multiple victories within a single tournament grant a streak bonus. Vash closed the notebook. The arena isn't just the Duke's prize, he thought. The arena is 8,000 points if I reach the final. He stood up. He looked toward Erwin. The city's lights were beginning to ignite on the horizon. 4 weeks until the arena. Need to register. Need a backstory. Need a story that explains why a small dark boy without a guild and without a history steps into the arena. Chan Minjun in his previous life had read thousands of stories. He knew how they were constructed. He knew what worked, what hooked, what convinced, what made people see what they wanted to see rather than what was there. He invented the story while walking to the city. By the time he entered the gates, it was ready. Simple, convincing, with the right amount of detail to seem true, and the right number of gaps so there was nothing to verify. At the guild registration window, the same tired female clerk as the first time. "Registration for the Arena of Glory," said Vash in Kai's voice. The clerk looked at him, at his height, at his apparent age, about 14 no more. "Minimum age is 16. "I'm 16, he said. The clerk looked with the expression of someone who sees an obvious lie and has no means to disprove it. "Rank? C+. Confirmation. "I killed a dark dryad in Fort Irwan West 3 hours ago," he said. "You can verify it. The body is there." The clerk looked for a long time, then picked up her pen. "Name? Kai. No surname." A pause. "Tell me, the Duke's special prize for the rank A and above final. What is it?" The clerk looked up. "That is not public information until the final." Understood. He signed the registration sheet, received a participant token, a small metal disc with a number. 23. He left the guild. He stood on the street of Erwin amid the evening crowd. Merchants, adventurers, townspeople. The token was warm in his palm. 4 weeks. 3 evolutions if he used the arena correctly. The Duke's special prize, whatever it might be. The sky above Erwan was darkening. Lanterns were being lit. The smell of food came from the nearest tavern. Vash bought 2 pies, ate slowly, standing by the wall. Chan Minjun had died reading an article about someone else's life. Here he was, living his own. Erwan was preparing for the tournament the way a city prepares for a holiday. Noisily, excessively, with flags on every post and merchants who had tripled prices on everything including pies. Vash observed this from a corner of the tavern and studied the list of participants. 48 people, various races, humans, elves, 2 half-blood orcs, 1 gnome with a hammer larger than himself. Ranks from D to B+. He read the names without particular interest until he reached 3 that appeared consecutively at the top of the list. Kane Volt, rank A-. Steel Crown Guild, Capital. Zara Ash, rank A, Free Hunter. Ren Drake, rank A+. Dawning Blade Guild, Capital. 3 participants of rank A and above. The system immediately provided a calculation without being asked. Victory over a rank. A- participant, approximately 800 EP. Rank A, approximately 1,100 EP. Rank A+, approximately 1,600 EP. Streak bonus for consecutive tournament victories. Progressive, from 10% to 40%. Victory over all 3 in the final rounds. Total approximately 4,200 EP with bonuses. 4,200, plus the 3,500 he already had. A total of 7,700. 300 short of 8,000. I'll cover it before the final, he thought. If I find a target outside the arena before it starts. He found it the next day. In the tavern, he overheard a conversation between 2 adventurers, rank B, come to Erwan as spectators. They talked about ruins to the south where a bone giant had recently wandered. Rank B+, solitary. Nobody was taking the contract because the giant was in a hard-to-reach gorge. For him, logistics wasn't a problem. By the evening of the same day, the bone giant, 18 meters tall, with a spine of fused human bones, turned out to be exactly the kind of difficult target he needed. Not because it was intelligent, intellect was 0, but because its bones regenerated like trolls, only faster, and shadow absorption didn't work. Vash spent 3 hours in the southern gorge devising a way to kill a creature that regenerated faster than he could deal damage. He found it by accident when the giant fell, and in falling smashed several of its own bones against the sharp rocks of the gorge. The rocks, he noted. It breaks itself faster than it regenerates. The next hour, he didn't attack the giant directly. He baited it, made it strike at the rocks in an attempt to catch the quick little shadow. The gorge's rocks did what he couldn't do himself, worked like sandpaper. By the end, the giant fell. Definitively. Half the skeleton had been shattered against its own gorge. EP plus 950. Total 4,515 over 8,000. Fifth evolution 3,485 away. Everything according to plan. 3 days remained until the start of the arena. Day 1. Preliminary rounds. The arena of Erewhon was circular. A standard construction, stone bleachers all around, in the center packed earth with sand on top. Capacity about 3,000 spectators. Completely full, plus people standing on the surrounding walls. Vash looked at all of this from the waiting tunnel beneath the bleachers and thought that in his previous life he wouldn't have left home even for such a spectacle. Token number 23. First fight. An adventurer rank D+. 1 Torvin, a human. Specialization shield and sword. System. Torvin, adventurer rank D+. Style, defensive, counterattacks. Strengths, endurance, shield block. Weaknesses, speed, maneuverability. EP on victory, 52. When Vash stepped onto the arena, the bleachers erupted. Not with approval, with surprise. 140 centimeters. In appearance, a teenager in dark clothing without armor, without visible weapons. Across from him, Torvin, a large, broad-shouldered man nearly 2 meters tall, in full armor, with a shield half his own height. From the bleachers, people were shouting various things. Torvin looked at him with an expression Vash classified instantly. A man who feels awkward about hitting a child. Good, thought Vash. That means he'll hesitate at the start. The judge gave the signal. Torvin did hesitate. He took a careful step, raised his shield, waited for an attack. Vash didn't attack. He simply walked in circles, slowly, watching Torvin, studying him. Dark affinity gathered quietly, imperceptibly, not on the surface of his skin, but inside, invisible. The bleachers began to laugh. The boy walks in circles, does nothing. Torvin lost patience after 40 seconds. Defensive style breaks when there's no attack. The reflexes start demanding initiative. He stepped forward. He raised his sword. Shadow leaped to the shadow behind his shield, directly behind his back. Dark affinity into the right fist. A strike to the base of the neck, precisely at the cervical vertebra. Torvin dropped his shield. His legs buckled. Not loss of consciousness, simply the body failing for a second from an overloaded nerve cluster. 1 second was enough. Vash was in front of him. Right hand at his throat, dark affinity like quiet pressure. Not choking, simply a choice. Do you yield? Asked Vash quietly. Torvin slowly raised his hand, the gesture of surrender. The bleachers erupted. Not with laughter, with noise. That particular sound a crowd makes when it sees something unexpected and doesn't know how to feel about it. EP plus 52. Vash returned to the tunnel. The next fight was in 2 hours. He passed the preliminary rounds in 1 day. 4 fights, 4 victories. Opponents, rank D+, E+, D, C-. Styles varied. A swordsman, an archer, an air mage, double daggers. The air mage was more interesting than the rest, the only one who tried to use distance as an advantage. He kept at 20 meters, struck with air blades, clearly counting on his small opponent not being able to reach him. The Shadow Needle, the new skill, 30 meters range, arrived before the mage managed to fire a 3rd time. Not lethal, just enough to break his concentration. The mage fell to 1 knee. After that, standard. By the evening of the first day, 446 points for all 4 fights. Total, 4,961. 3,000 to the 5th evolution. Over dinner in the tavern, he listened to other adventurers discussing the day's results. He was mentioned frequently. The dark boy without armor and without weapons. His shadow leap had been seen, commented on, debated. What kind of affinity was it? Versions varied. Not one was correct. At the next table sat two of those three, rank A- and rank A. Cain Volt and Zara Ash. Cain was young, about 25 in appearance, light hair, rank A-. Weapon: paired blades, a fast fighter judging by the way he moved even at the table. Zara was older, dark-skinned, rank A, with a long spear leaned against the wall. Quiet. She ate without raising her eyes. Cain noticed Vash. He looked directly at him. "You're the boy with the shadow leap?" he asked without preamble. "Yes." "Kai?" "Yes." Cain studied him for a second. "Not bad for C+. What do you use?" "Dark affinity." "Something like that." "Where from?" "From the east." Cain made a sound, not aggressively, with curiosity. "Haven't seen a style like that before." A pause. "We'll see you in the semifinal." Zara, throughout all of this, hadn't raised her eyes from her food. But when Vash was getting up, she said quietly without looking, "Be careful with Ren." Vash stopped. "Ren Drake, rank A+? He isn't just strong," said Zara. Still not raising her eyes, "He's ruthless, on the arena that isn't forbidden. But be careful." She said nothing more. She continued eating. Vash left the tavern and thought about that warning. An unfamiliar woman, rank A, warning him, a boy rank C+, about a finalist stronger than both of them. Why? Because she saw something, he thought. Something in the way I move. Something that convinced her it was worth saying. He added it to his list of data, without conclusions. Day 2, quarterfinals. 8 participants, 4 fights. Vash looked at his pairing. Adventurer rank B-, a gnome, a hammer. System: Gwyn Stonefang, rank B-. Style: heavy strike, seismic affinity. Strikes create shockwaves along the ground. Weaknesses: speed, aerial combat. EP on victory, 380. Seismic affinity. Waves along the ground. Don't stand on the ground, he decided. Simple enough. Gwyn stepped onto the arena with the hammer over his shoulder and looked at Vash with the same expression as Torvin on the first day. Then, apparently, he remembered yesterday's fights and the expression became more serious. The signal. Gwyn struck the hammer into the ground immediately, without a wind-up. The shockwave traveled across the sand like a ripple on water. Fast, wide. Vash jumped. Not a shadow leap, a regular jump upward. 2 meters high, small body, light. Jumping wasn't difficult. The wave passed beneath him. Gwyn looked up with unconcealed surprise. Shadow needle, while in the air from 20 meters, straight into the shoulder holding the hammer. Not lethal, painful. Gwyn jerked his shoulder. The hammer swayed, landing. Shadow leaped to the shadow behind the gnome. Dark strike to the back, to the lower part where there was no armor. Gwyn turned, quickly, unexpectedly quickly for a heavy fighter. The hammer came in a wide horizontal strike. Vash barely got away, had to fall, roll across the sand, get up. The hammer grazed him. The dark armor absorbed half the blow. He's faster than he looks, Vash noted, rising. The next 6 minutes, Vash changed tactics twice. The gnome was adapting, stopped using waves and switched to direct attacks with attempts to guess where the shadow leap would land. Several times he guessed right. The hammer passed within a meter. Once it landed glancingly on his left arm. The sleeve tore. Beneath it, dark gray skin was exposed. The bleachers noticed. They began to whisper. Vash paid no attention. He focused. The gnome adapts, he thought. A smart fighter. He's memorizing the shadow leap pattern. 3 or 4 more repetitions and he'll start landing hits consistently. So we changed the pattern completely. He stopped. He stood in the center of the arena. He folded his arms, a demonstratively relaxed pose, a complete absence of a fighting stance. Gwyn narrowed his eyes. He didn't attack. He waited for a trick. Vash was gathering dark affinity throughout his entire body, slowly, evenly. The dark armor began to form, but not as usual, not as an external shell, differently, denser, deeper. He had been practicing this for 3 nights straight before the arena. He called it to himself full immersion, complete merging of the dark armor with the body, not armor on the outside, but a change in the density of the body itself from within. Slower, heavier, but the damage reduction was drastic. Gwyn lost patience and struck. A direct hammer blow, maximum force, everything in one movement. The hammer landed. The bleachers gasped. Vash stood. He swayed back half a step. He didn't fall. The dark affinity absorbed most of the blow. Not all of it. The ribs cracked again, one for certain. But he was standing. Gwyn looked at him with an expression Vash hadn't seen before. Not surprise. Something else? "What are you?" the gnome said quietly. Vash didn't answer. He stepped forward, slowly, full immersion making each step heavier. Dark affinity in his right hand, concentrated, dense, hot. One strike, into the hammer, not into the gnome, into the hammer. The dark affinity and the hammer's seismic artifact reacted to each other. A small explosion on contact, and the hammer flew out of Gwyn's hands. The gnome was left without a weapon. He looked at his empty hands. He looked at Vash. He raised his hand. Surrender. EP plus 380. Total. 5,341 over 8,000. In the tunnel, Kane Volt was waiting for him. Apparently, he had watched the fight from the tunnel, not from the bleachers. Full immersion, he said. Dark armor inward rather than outward. That's theoretically impossible for C+. Theoretically, Vash agreed. Kane looked at him for a long time. How old are you really? 16? No. 16, Vash repeated in the same tone. A pause. Kane smirked. Not unkindly, rather with understanding. Fine, Kai. 16. He turned to go. He stopped. We're in different brackets until the final. If you make it, we'll meet there. I'll make it, said Vash. Semifinal. Day 3. 4 remained. Vash, Kane Volt, Zara Ash, Ren Drake. Schedule. Vash versus Zara. Kane versus Ren. He looked at the schedule and thought this was the most inconvenient arrangement. Zara was rank A, meaning large EP, meaning he needed to win. But winning against rank A meant revealing capabilities he would have preferred to keep hidden until the final. And Zara had warned him about Ren. That didn't make her a friend, but it made the situation more complicated. We win. We reveal minimum information. Zara stepped onto the arena calmly, long spear in hand, no showmanship. She looked at him without surprise. She gave a brief professional nod. Not a friend, not an enemy, an opponent. Vash nodded back. The signal. Zara attacked first. Without a wind-up, the spear went in a thrusting strike at unexpected speed for someone with such a weapon. Vash got away with a shadow leap, standard, and heard the spear cut the air where he had been. Fast, he noted. Very fast. Zara didn't stop. She turned, the spear in a horizontal strike, wide sweep. Vash leaped again. Again the spear followed, as if she could see where he would land. She's anticipating the shadow leap, he understood. Experience. She had seen his fights and calculated the pattern. Shadow needle from a distance, while she was preparing her next strike. Zara deflected it with the spear shaft, automatically without particular effort. B plus or A, he thought. The gap is enormous. I'm C plus. Without special conditions, I lose. Special conditions are needed. He stopped jumping. He stood still and let the spear hit him. Not completely. He put the dark armor against a glancing blow, took it sideways. The spear split the armor, passed along the ribs, pain sharp, breath knocked out. But he didn't fly back, didn't fall. He grabbed the spear shaft with both hands right at the moment of the strike. Zara tried to pull it free. A strong jerk. He held. Dark affinity flowed from his hands into the wood of the spear. Not destroying, enveloping, making the surface slippery for her grip. A second jerk. The spear came out of her hands. Vash held the spear. He looked at it. He planted it in the sand beside him. vertically, demonstratively. "Without a weapon?" he asked. The bleachers went silent. 3,000 people in complete silence. A rare occurrence. Zara looked at him for a long time. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. Barely perceptibly. Without a weapon, she agreed. The fight without the spear was different. Zara turned out to be a strong hand-to-hand fighter. The strikes were precise, fast, with technique that was clearly the result of many years. He took 3 blows to the body before he adapted. But now this was a game he knew how to play. Close contact, chaotic positions, shadows everywhere. Shadow leap at short distances, 1 meter, 2, constant changes of angle. Shadow absorption at every physical contact. He drew dark affinity from her, though she didn't have much of it. The rank gap was being smoothed by his specialization. Not eliminated, but smoothed. At the 12th minute, Zara slowed, fatigue, and some dark affinity absorbed. He ended the fight at the 14th. Zara lay on her back, alive, in order, simply unable to get up for the next few seconds. Vash's dark affinity had created for a fraction of a second a movement restriction, enough for her to feel that continuing was pointless. She raised her hand. The bleachers erupted, properly this time, not like after the first fight with Torvin, but properly, with 3,000 voices. Vash extended a hand to help her up. Zara took it. She stood. She looked at him with the same barely perceptible expression he couldn't quite classify. "Ren won't give up his weapon," she said quietly as they left the arena. "And he won't stop when an opponent falls. He hasn't had any disqualifications only because technically he doesn't break the rules." "Thank you," said Vash. "Don't mention it," she answered. "I just want to see an interesting final. EP, plus 1,100. Total, 6,441 over 8,000. In the second semifinal, Ren Drake dealt with Kane Volt in 7 minutes. Vash watched from the tunnel. He watched carefully. Ren was tall, nearly 2 meters, broad-shouldered, with a 2-handed sword he wielded like a one-handed weapon. Affinity, fire, rank A+. Each sword strike left arcs of flame in the air. Kane was fast, one of the fastest fighters Vash had seen at the arena. But Ren was faster, despite his mass. At the 5th minute, Kane fell. He rose, got up to one knee. Ren struck again, not finishing, simply not letting him stand. Kane raised his hand. Surrender. Ren sheathed his sword. He turned toward the bleachers, not toward his opponent, toward the bleachers. He accepted the applause as his due. Kane got up on his own. Ren didn't extend a hand. Vash memorized every detail. Fire affinity, rank A+. Dark affinity is the opposite of fire. Shadow absorption doesn't work on fire. Shadow leap into darkness. Fire illuminates the arena, fewer shadows. Dark affinity against fire. Neutral, not an advantage. Full physical contact is impossible. He'll burn him before he can touch him. Ranged attack. He's rank A+, the shadow needle won't stop him. Vash thought in the tunnel while Ren was leaving the arena. Ren walked past. He stopped. He looked down at Vash. For a long time. Then he said, "You're next." "I know." Ren looked for another second. "How old are you?" 16. Ren smirked, unpleasantly, with the tone Vash recognized from anime. Antagonist of the first type. Not evil, simply not seeing people below him as people. "Interesting," said Ren. "Usually I don't find things interesting." He left. Vash watched him go and thought that he had 3 hours until the final and no plan that would work with high probability. "There are things I haven't tried yet," he thought. "One specific thing. Risky. But otherwise there's no winning." He sat down in the tunnel. He closed his eyes. 3 hours. Think. Final. Evening of the 3rd day. The arena was lit with torches along the entire perimeter. For the final, they had added extra ones, spectacular. The bleachers overflowing. Vash could see in the box above the central bleachers a man in rich clothing, elderly, with a tired face. The Duke of Erewhon. Ren stepped onto the arena first to thunderous applause. He raised his sword, showed it to the bleachers. Flame on the blade flared briefly. Spectacular for the audience. Then Vash stepped out. The bleachers' reaction was different, a mixture of excitement and unease. Over 3 days, this small dark figure without weapons had been remembered, discussed, bet on. Vash stepped to the center of the arena. He looked at Ren. Ren looked back. No smirk this time. Serious. Professional. Good, thought Vash. A serious opponent is dangerous. But a serious opponent doesn't make mistakes, meaning he's predictable. The judge raised his hand, lowered it. Ren attacked immediately. Fire on the sword, a horizontal strike from 5 meters away, an arc of flame traveling through the air. Vash dropped down, fell to one knee, the arc passed over his head, singed his hair. The disguise crystal flickered for a moment. High-intensity heat put a small strain on the illusion. Shadow Needle immediately, while Ren was winding up for a second strike. It hit the shoulder. Ren felt it. Winced, slowed for half a second. Didn't stop. The second flame strike. Wider, lower, covering more space. Shadow leap up and sideways to the edge of the arena where the shadows from the bleachers were denser. The flame passed a meter away. Ren began circling slowly, tightening. The fire around him intensified. Not arcs anymore, an aura now, living flame enveloping him like armor. A warm wave came from him, perceptibly even from 10 meters. Close contact. Impossible. Distance. Shadow needles slow him but don't stop him. Shadow leap. The arena is well lit, few shadows. All of this he had known 3 hours ago. That's exactly why he had spent 3 hours thinking about something else. Few shadows, meaning he needed to create them himself. Dark affinity at maximum concentration. Discharge not at Ren, upward. Into the torches, not all of them, the 8 nearest. Dark energy against fire extinguished them. A quarter of the arena plunged into shadow. The bleachers stirred in confusion. Ren stopped, for the first time since the fight began. His fire armor gave him illumination, but now he stood in a zone where shadow was mixed with his own light. Contrasts, sharp, uncomfortable to perceive. Vash leaped. Not toward him, to the darkest point he had just created, and from there, shadow leap. 20 meters, to the shadow directly behind Ren where the fire armor gave the least illumination. Ren sensed it, began to turn. Fast. Very fast. Not fast enough. Vash was behind him for a fraction of a second. Dark affinity, not in his fists, in both palms, full immersion. 2 points of contact to Ren's back on both sides of the spine. Shadow absorption. Fire affinity and dark. Opposites. Shadow absorption wasn't designed for fire. The system had said so. He knew it. But opposites react on contact. The explosion was small, directed inward, not an outward blast. Dark affinity met fire at close range. They partially annihilated each other. Ren received a flash of internal pain. Something like the Shadow Needle, but hundreds of times more intense. The fire armor went out for a moment. Vash was thrown back. The explosion repelled both of them. He hit the arena barrier. The dark armor cracked across its entire surface. His palms burned. Literally, burns where the affinities had collided. He stood up. Ren was standing too, swaying. The fire armor was recovering but more slowly. Something inside was disrupted. He looked at Vash with an expression Vash had seen only once, when the gnome had looked at him after the hammer blow. "What are you?" Only now it wasn't a question. It was the understanding that there was no answer. Ren attacked furiously. Without calculation, for the first time in the entire fight losing control. Powerful strikes, fire and lashes, the arena floor cracked where he struck with the sword. Vash retreated. Shadow leaps into the darkness he had created himself. Shadow needles accumulating. Full immersion absorbing each blow he hadn't gotten away from. The bleachers were screaming. Not words, just sound. A 3,000-voice roar. At the 8th minute, Vash understood that he was running out of strength faster than Ren. The burns on his palms were worsening with each shadow leap. Full immersion was holding less. One of his palms was beginning to discharge affinity unstably. One strike, he thought. I need one strike that ends this. Not gradual attrition. One moment. He remembered the dark dryad. Not how he had killed her, what she had said. "You are consuming me." Shadow absorption didn't work on fire as a standard skill, but annihilation worked. What if the annihilation could be directed in one direction? System. Question. Is it possible to direct the annihilation of dark and fire affinity in one direction only? The answer didn't come immediately. 3 seconds, long for the system. Theoretically possible with full concentration of dark affinity in the outer layer of armor at the point of contact. Probability of success given the host's current condition, 40%. 40%. In a game he had never made bets on 40%. That was a bad ratio. Better to find another way. But there was no other way. Vash stopped retreating. He stood in the center of the arena. He lowered his arms. He looked at Ren. "Are you surrendering?" asked Ren. "No," answered Vash. "Come here." Ren looked for a second. Then he walked, carefully, professionally. Fire armor at maximum, sword ready. Vash was gathering dark affinity across the entire surface of the dark armor, evenly, like a second skin. Maximum density. It burned everywhere. The burns reacted to the concentration. Ren. 5 meters. 3. He struck. Vash didn't move. The sword hit the left shoulder, fire and metal together. The pain was... he hadn't expected how much. The dark armor met the fire at the surface, and in that moment he did what the system called directed annihilation. Active absorption of fire into one point into the armor's surface with conversion into dark energy. It worked. Ren's fire armor went out completely, all at once like a blown-out candle. Dark affinity had absorbed his fire at the point of contact and used it as fuel. The dark armor flared violet for a second. Bright, abnormally bright for this skill. Ren stood without armor. For the first time in the entire fight, vulnerable on the outside. Vash struck with his left hand. Dark affinity burned from the fire, but worked. A strike to the chest, not with force. Force wasn't needed. With affinity. Ren took a step back, then another. He fell to one knee. He tried to rise. Fire was returning, slowly, recovering. Vash's dark affinity in his chest was disrupting concentration. He rose to both knees. Vash stood over him. The left arm wouldn't raise. The shoulder was burned through. Dark blood had soaked the clothing. The disguise crystal was flickering. "Do you yield?" he asked quietly. Ren looked up at him for a long time. The fire in his hands went out and flared unstably. Wouldn't obey. "Who are you?" he asked. Quietly, just for the two of them. "Kai," answered Vash. "Rank C+, from Erewhon." Ren looked for another second. He raised his hand. The bleachers stopped screaming. For a second, complete silence. Then an explosion. 3,000 voices simultaneously, the torches trembled from the sound. Somewhere in the box, the Duke of Erewhon rose from his seat. EP plus 1,600. Final streak bonus plus 680. Total 8,721 over 8,000. Threshold exceeded. 5th evolution available. Vash stood in the center of the arena. Left shoulder burned through, palms covered in burns, disguise crystal dying in his pocket. And listened to 3,000 people screaming the name he had invented 3 weeks ago at a forest stream. He thought about Chon Minjun, who had lived 28 years in a room with anime posters. About the fact that that person had never in his life heard anyone scream his name. The disguise crystal gave out. The illusion began to dissolve at the edges. He felt it and stepped into the shadow at the edge of the arena. Quickly, while no one was looking in the right direction. No one was looking. Everyone was watching the bleachers, the Duke rising from his seat, the judge raising the victor's hand. In the shadow at the edge of the arena, the small dark figure allowed the crystal to die. It stood for a second in its true form. Then it touched the last crystal, the spare, taken precisely for this moment. The appearance returned. The judge was looking for him, glancing around. Vash stepped out of the shadow. The judge took his hand, the right one, the one that wasn't burned, and raised it. Above the arena of Erewhon, the evening of the 3rd day, 2 months after Chon Minjun's death at his monitor, Vash heard them scream his name. He allowed himself 1 second to simply stand there. Then the next item on the plan switched on in his head. In the winner's room, a small hall beneath the bleachers with 1 table and 2 chairs, the Duke was waiting for him. Not a servant, not an envoy. The Duke himself, elderly, with the tired face Vash had seen from above in the box. Beside him, 2 guards at the wall. No one else. The Duke looked at him when he entered. For a long time. With an expression that was difficult to read. Not delight, not fear. Something third. "Sit down," he said. Vash sat. "What is your real name?" the Duke asked. "Kai?" "No." The Duke shook his head. "I have ruled this city for 30 years. I have seen adventurers of every rank and every race. What you did today, that is not done by people with the name Kai from the village of Hen, which appears on no map." Vash was silent for a second. "Vash," he said. The Duke nodded, as if accepting the answer without verifying it. "The special prize," said the Duke. "You wanted to know." He placed on the table an envelope, heavy with a seal. "This is an invitation to the grand arena in the capital, the Tournament of 6 Kingdoms, held once every 5 years. Participants, the strongest from across the continent. Minimum participant rank. A. The winner receives the title of First Blade of the Continent and an audience with all 6 kings simultaneously." Vash looked at the envelope. "When?" "In 6 months." A pause. "I have given this invitation to the winner of my arena every year. In 12 years, not one person has used it." The Duke looked at him. "You are the first to ask about this prize before the final." "Because it was the goal," said Vash. The Duke was silent for a second. "You are not human," he said quietly. "Not a question, not a threat, simply a fact." Vash looked at him. "No. What are you?" "Something new," answered Vash. "For now." The Duke looked for a long time. Then he took the envelope and held it out across the table. 6 months, he said. "The capital, the Tournament of 6 Kingdoms." A pause. "Minimum rank A." "I know. Right now you are C+. "I know." The Duke looked at him for another second. Then, for the first time in the entire conversation, he smiled. Not broadly. Barely perceptibly. "Good luck, Vash." Vash took the envelope. He stood. He gave a short bow, as adventurers did to those of higher rank. He walked to the door. He stopped. "Duke?" "Yes." "The Dark Dryad in Fort Irwin West. Her forest to the north was destroyed by people." A pause. "Those were not my people," said the Duke slowly. "I know. But if there is a possibility of restoring the forest, it would be worth it." Vash didn't turn around, just information. He left. That night in the forest beyond Irwan, in the darkness, alone. The 5th evolution finally came. The options were different from before. Not 3, not 4. 1. A single one. The host has reached the point of irreversible specialization. The only available path? Dark Sovereign, a unique evolution, available only to hosts who have traveled the path of dark affinity through all stages. Rank, B+. Height, 170 centimeters. Description, complete merging of dark affinity with the physical body. Dark affinity becomes the host's nature, not a skill. New skills, dark domain, creation of a zone of dark affinity within a 50-meter radius. Everything inside subject to the host's dark affinity. Shadow absorption upgraded to essence devourment. Partial absorption of an opponent's skills possible upon contact. Unique skill unlocked. Form of darkness. Temporary transition into true form enhanced by dark affinity, duration up to 1 hour. Next threshold, 30,000 EP. 30,000. Until the Tournament of 6 Kingdoms. 6 months. Vash lay in the darkness of the forest while the evolution rebuilt him, painfully, slowly.